An obscure detail you might not immediately notice is the practice of cursing wells or blessing springs. While many springs were considered holy and visited for their healing properties, some were believed to be cursed or inhabited by malevolent spirits. Conversely, if a well suddenly ran dry or its water became foul, it might be believed to be cursed by a witch or a demon. People would perform elaborate rituals to either cleanse a cursed well or to bless a new one, often involving specific prayers, offerings, or even the sacrifice of small animals. It highlights the deep connection people felt to their natural resources and their belief that these resources could be influenced by supernatural means. Even animals can be seen as agents of the devil or witches. Black cats, for instance, are often associated with witchcraft, believed to be familiars or even witches themselves in animal form. Toads, ravens, and other creatures of the night are also viewed with suspicion, their presence sometimes interpreted as a sign of dark magic at work. This extends the realm of fear beyond human agents, making even the natural world a potential source of demonic influence. Will the crops fail? Will disease sweep through your village, taking your loved ones with it? Will raiders descend from the hills, or will the local lord demand more than you can possibly give? There are no scientific explanations readily available for the misfortunes that plague humanity. No weather forecasts, no germ theory, no understanding of genetics. When your child develops a fever, it's not a virus, it's a malevolent spirit or a curse. When the harvest withers, it's not drought, it's divine displeasure or the work of a mischievous sprite. The legal systems of the time, often intertwined with ecclesiastical law, provided mechanisms for investigating and prosecuting witchcraft. While torture was not universally applied, it was often used to extract confessions, and the accused, under duress, might implicate others, leading to a cascade of accusations. The trials themselves were often public spectacles, reinforcing the community's belief in the reality of witches and the necessity of their eradication. It was a terrifying feedback loop, where fear begot accusations and accusations, often through coercion, begot more fear. You rise with the sun, your muscles aching from a night spent on the hard ground. The chill in the air bites at your exposed skin, and you pull your rough cloak tighter. As you step outside your wattle and daub hut, the village stirs around you. Chickens peck at the muddy ground. A pig grunts contentedly in its pen, and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer echoes through the morning mist. Life is communal, interwoven, and utterly dependent on the land and the whims of nature. You see your neighbor, old Alara, tying a small bundle of dried herbs above her doorway. You know it's to ward off the evil eye, a common belief that a malicious glance from an envious person can bring misfortune or illness. You don't question it. You probably did the same thing last week after your cow unexpectedly went lame. In a world where so much is beyond your control, these small, ritualistic acts offer a semblance of agency, a tiny flicker of hope that you can influence the vast, indifferent forces that govern your existence. The academic debate still rages about the precise role of gender in the witch hunts. Why were so many more women accused and executed as witches than men? Was it due to misogynistic societal structures, the association of women with nature and healing, which could be twisted into dark magic, or their perceived spiritual weakness and susceptibility to demonic temptation? It's a crucial question for understanding the social dynamics of this period of intense fear. The concept of luck takes on an almost tangible quality. A four-leaf clover isn't just a botanical anomaly, it's a powerful talisman. The horseshoe nailed above a barn door isn't just decoration, it's a shield against ill fortune. You might carry a small stone with a natural hole in it, believing it protects you from nightmares. Or perhaps wear a piece of coral to ward off disease. These aren't just quaint customs. They are deeply ingrained practices, passed down through generations, born from a desperate need to explain the inexplicable and to exert some influence over a world that seems determined to keep you on your toes. It's like trying to debug a complex piece of code with no documentation and only a vague idea of what the program is supposed to do. You'd try anything, right? Even sacrificing a small, slightly confused chicken to the nearest server rack? Don't worry. No chickens were harmed in the making of this analogy. Ultimately, the rise of the fear of witches and demons in the Middle Ages represents a profound shift in the understanding of evil. It moves from an abstract theological concept to a tangible, active threat, embodied by human agents who have made pacts with the devil. This fear, fueled by religious doctrine, social anxieties, and the desperate need to explain misfortune, creates a climate of suspicion and terror. You live in a world where the unseen forces are not just mysterious, they are actively malevolent, and your very survival, both physical and spiritual, depends on recognizing and combating their insidious influence. Your days are long and arduous, filled with manual labor. You might be tilling fields with an ox-drawn plow, the heavy soil clinging to your boots, or perhaps spinning wool by hand, the repetitive motion a hypnotic rhythm. As you work, your mind isn't just on the task at hand. It's constantly observing, interpreting, seeking patterns in the chaos. A sudden flight of crows might be an omen. A persistent cough in the village could be a sign of a coming plague, or perhaps a witch's curse. The rustling of leaves in an otherwise still forest might indicate the presence of a fairy or a mischievous spirit. Every creak of the house at night, every unusual animal sound, every strange shadow is imbued with potential meaning. You live in a world where the supernatural isn't a distant, abstract concept. It's woven into the very fabric of your daily life, a constant, unseen presence. As the fear of witches and demons casts a long, chilling shadow over your medieval world. Another, perhaps less terrifying, but equally pervasive, set of beliefs guides your decisions, the practices of astrology and divination. In a world where the future is uncertain and knowledge is limited, people turn to the heavens and to various forms of fortune-telling, seeking guidance, reassurance, and a glimpse into what tomorrow might bring. The church, a dominant force in this era, plays a complex role in this tapestry of belief. While it preaches a monotheistic God and condemns pagan practices, it often inadvertently reinforces the very superstitions it seeks to eradicate. The concept of saints, for example, becomes a powerful conduit for belief in supernatural intervention. You might pray to Saint Anthony to find lost objects, or to Saint Roch to protect against plague. Their relics, a bone, a piece of cloth, are believed to possess miraculous powers, capable of healing the sick or bringing good fortune. Pilgrimages to holy sites, where these relics are housed, are undertaken with immense faith, often in the hope of a miraculous cure or divine blessing. It's a bit like believing your Wi-Fi signal will improve if you place your router next to a particularly shiny rock. Spoiler alert, it won't. But you can always try. You might find yourself looking up at the night sky, not just in awe, but with a sense of profound inquiry. The stars, the planets, the moon, these celestial bodies are not just distant lights. They are believed to be intimately connected to your earthly existence. Their movements and alignments influencing your fate, your health, and even the success of your crops. This is the realm of astrology, a complex system of belief that attempts to map the cosmic influences onto human affairs. While often condemned by the church as a form of forbidden divination, its practice was widespread, even among the educated elite. It's like checking your daily horoscope, but with significantly more academic rigor and a lot more parchment. This isn't to say that people were unintelligent, far from it. They were incredibly observant, resourceful, and pragmatic within the confines of their knowledge. But their understanding of the world was fundamentally different. The scientific method, with its emphasis on empirical evidence and repeatable experiments, was centuries away from widespread adoption. Instead, knowledge was often passed down through oral tradition, steeped in folklore and anecdotal evidence. If your grandmother swore that rubbing a certain herb on a wart made it disappear, you believed her, especially if you saw it work. If the village elder claimed that a particular ritual appeased the river spirits and prevented floods, you participated without question. These weren't just quaint customs, they were survival strategies, born from generations of trial and error, and deeply intertwined with a worldview that saw the natural and supernatural as intrinsically linked. Imagine a wealthy merchant about to embark on a perilous sea voyage. He might consult an astrologer, a learned individual who, using complex charts and calculations, determines the most auspicious date and time for departure. The position of the planets, the phases of the moon, the rising and setting of specific constellations, all are meticulously analyzed to predict favorable winds, calm seas, and a safe return. This isn't just a superstitious whim, it's a serious attempt to mitigate risk in a world where maritime travel is fraught with danger. The astrologer, in this context, is less a charlatan and more a cosmic risk assessor. You might find yourself participating in a local festival, perhaps celebrating the spring equinox or the autumn harvest. These celebrations, though often given a Christian veneer, are deeply rooted in ancient pagan traditions, designed to ensure fertility of the land and protection from malevolent forces. You dance around a bonfire, the smoke stinging your eyes, but you believe it purifies the air and wards off evil spirits. You might hang garlands of flowers, not just for beauty, but to invite good fortune and abundance. The boundaries between religious devotion and superstitious practice are incredibly fluid. A prayer might be offered to God for a bountiful harvest, but a small offering might also be left for the local nature spirits, just in case. It's a pragmatic approach to spirituality, covering all your bases in a world where the stakes are incredibly high. Divination, in its many forms, offers a more immediate, localized way to peer into the future or uncover hidden truths. You might visit a local wise woman who practices palmistry, reading the lines on your hand to reveal insights into your character and destiny. Or perhaps she uses osteomancy, interpreting patterns on animal bones, or even kleromancy, casting lots or dice to answer specific questions. These practices, while often seen as remnants of paganism, persist because they offer a sense of control, a way to make informed decisions in a world where information is scarce and uncertainty is rampant. It's like asking a magic 8-ball for investment advice, but with slightly more dramatic flair and probably a chicken involved somewhere. Still no actual chicken sacrifices, just to be clear. The fear of the unknown is a palpable force. When a sudden, violent storm sweeps through, flattening crops and tearing roofs from homes, it's not just a meteorological event. It's the wrath of God, or perhaps the work of a powerful demon. When a mysterious illness causes people to break out in boils and die within days, it's not a bacterium, it's a curse, or a punishment for sin, or the insidious work of a witch. Without the tools of modern science, people sought explanations in the only framework they had, the supernatural. This led to a pervasive sense of anxiety, a constant vigilance against unseen threats. You might avoid certain paths at dusk, believing them to be haunted by restless spirits. You might refuse to speak ill of the dead, fearing their spectral retribution. Every shadow, every unusual sound, every unexplained event could be a harbinger of doom. A common historical fact is the significant role of astrology in medieval medicine. Physicians often consulted astrological charts before diagnosing illnesses or prescribing treatments. They believed that different parts of the body were governed by different planets and zodiac signs, and that the timing of medical interventions was crucial. For example, a doctor might refuse to bleed a patient if the moon was in a bad astrological house, believing it would lead to a poor outcome. This blend of medical knowledge and astrological belief highlights how deeply intertwined the natural and supernatural were in the medieval understanding of health. One common historical fact is the widespread belief in the power of relics. Pieces of bone, hair, or clothing associated with saints were thought to possess miraculous healing powers or offer protection. You might travel for days, even weeks, to touch a fragment of a saint's finger bone, believing it could cure your chronic cough or ensure a safe childbirth. This devotion wasn't just religious, it was deeply intertwined with a magical worldview, where the sacred object itself held inherent power. The demand for these relics was so high that a thriving, albeit often fraudulent, market emerged. It was the medieval equivalent of a black market for rare Pokemon cards, except with significantly higher stakes for your eternal soul. Consider the practice of scrying, where a diviner gazes into a reflective surface, a crystal ball, a bowl of water, or even a polished piece of obsidian, to see visions or receive messages. This isn't just about predicting the future, it's about gaining insight into past events, locating lost objects, or even identifying those who might have caused harm through witchcraft. The scryer acts as a conduit, connecting the seeker to the unseen realms where knowledge resides. This practice, while often associated with darker magic, was also used for more benign purposes, offering comfort and guidance to those who felt lost or vulnerable. An obscure detail you might notice is the practice of apotropaic magic, rituals or objects intended to ward off evil. For instance, you might see people carving grotesque faces into pumpkins or turnips, the precursors to our Halloween jack-o'-lanterns, and placing them outside their homes to scare away malevolent spirits. Or perhaps you'd witness a ritual where a new house foundation had a small, live animal buried beneath it. A sacrifice meant to ensure the building's stability and protect its inhabitants from misfortune. It sounds grim to modern ears, but in their context, it was a logical step to safeguard their precious, hard-won shelter. An obscure detail you might encounter is the practice of bibliomancy, or divination by books. This involved opening a sacred text, often the Bible at random, and interpreting the first passage your eye fell upon as an answer to a question or a guide for future action. While seemingly simple, it was a way for individuals, particularly those who were literate, to seek divine guidance directly, bypassing the need for a professional diviner. It's like using a random page generator on Wikipedia to decide your life's path, but with significantly more spiritual gravitas. The very structure of society reinforced these beliefs. The church, as mentioned, was central, but so too were local customs and traditions. Village elders, wise women who were sometimes revered, sometimes feared as witches, and even traveling charlatans all played a role in shaping and perpetuating the supernatural worldview. There was no single, unified scientific authority to challenge these beliefs. Instead, knowledge was fragmented, localized, and often based on centuries of accumulated folklore. The authority of experience and tradition often outweighed any nascent attempts at rational inquiry. The academic debate still rages among historians about the true extent of astrological and divinatory practice among different social classes. While we have ample evidence of its use among the elite kings, nobles, and even some clergy, how widespread was it among the common peasantry? Were their practices more informal, based on local folklore and oral tradition? Or did they also seek out professional astrologers and diviners when circumstances allowed? It's a challenging question to answer. Given the scarcity of written records from the lower strata of medieval society, you learn to live with this constant hum of superstition. It's not just something you believe, it's something you do. You might spit over your left shoulder to avert bad luck after hearing a crow caw 3 times. You might avoid walking under a ladder, not because of some modern construction hazard, but because it forms a triangle, a symbol associated with the Holy Trinity, and breaking it could invite misfortune. You might tie a red ribbon around your baby's wrist to protect them from changelings, mischievous fairies who were believed to swap human babies for their own sickly offspring. These aren't conscious decisions to be superstitious. They are automatic, ingrained responses, part of the cultural operating system of your medieval mind. You might also encounter practices like sortilege, where objects are drawn from a bag or container to determine an outcome. This could be as simple as drawing straws to decide who performs the task, or as complex as using specially marked stones or sticks to answer questions about marriage, travel, or business ventures. The randomness of the draw is believed to be guided by unseen forces, offering a glimpse into the divine will or the workings of fate. It's the medieval equivalent of flipping a coin, but with a much more elaborate backstory and probably a dramatic reveal. The academic debate still rages among historians about the exact degree to which superstition was distinct from religion in the medieval mind. Were people consciously separating their prayers to God from their use of a protective charm? Or was it all part of a seamless tapestry of belief? A holistic approach to navigating a world filled with both divine and demonic forces. Some argue that the church actively fought against what it deemed superstition, while others contend that popular piety often blurred the lines. Incorporating elements of folk belief into mainstream religious practice? It's a fascinating question. Trying to understand the nuances of a worldview so different from our own. The belief in omens, as we discussed earlier, is a form of spontaneous divination. A sudden flight of birds, the appearance of a specific animal, a strange dream. These are all interpreted as messages from the unseen world, offering clues about future events. You learn to read these signs, to interpret the subtle language of the cosmos and the natural world, constantly seeking patterns and meaning in the chaos of daily life. This constant vigilance, this heightened awareness, is a fundamental aspect of your medieval worldview. Consider the role of dreams. In your medieval world, dreams are not just random neurological firings. They are often seen as messages from God, warnings from demons, or glimpses into the future. You might consult a dream interpreter, someone in the village known for their ability to decipher these nocturnal visions. A dream of falling teeth could portend death, while a dream of clear water might signify good fortune. This adds another layer of supernatural interpretation to your already complex existence. Your subconscious isn't just processing daily events, it's a potential conduit for divine or infernal communication, requiring careful attention and interpretation. Consider the role of physiognomy, the belief that a person's character and destiny can be determined by their physical appearance, particularly their facial features. While not strictly divination, it's a form of interpretation that attempts to uncover hidden truths through observable signs. A broad forehead might indicate intelligence, while close-set eyes might suggest deceit. This practice, though often unscientific, provided a quick and easy way to assess others in a society where trust was often hard-won and first impressions mattered. Even the landscape itself is imbued with meaning. Certain trees are considered sacred, perhaps home to ancient spirits. Rivers and streams might be thought to have their own guardians, demanding respect and offerings. Caves could be portals to the underworld, or dwelling places for mythical beasts. You wouldn't just walk through a forest, you'd navigate it with a heightened awareness, respecting its hidden powers and avoiding places known to be cursed or enchanted. It's a world alive with unseen forces, where every natural feature has a story, a history, and a potential influence on your fate. The academic debate still rages about the philosophical underpinnings of medieval astrology. Was it viewed as a deterministic force, meaning your fate was entirely predetermined by the stars? Or was it seen as a set of influences that could be understood and potentially mitigated through free will and divine grace? This tension between fate and free will was a constant source of theological and philosophical debate throughout the Middle Ages. And astrology sat right at the heart of it. The constant threat of disease, particularly the devastating plagues that swept across Europe, further fueled the reliance on supernatural explanations. When the Black Death arrived, wiping out a third or even half of the population in some areas, there was no scientific understanding of its transmission. People attributed it to God's wrath, planetary alignments, or even poisoned wells dug by enemies. In response, they turned to fervent prayer, processions, flagellation, and a myriad of desperate, often bizarre, superstitious practices. You might wear a pouch of aromatic herbs to ward off the bad air miasma theory, or carry a small piece of paper inscribed with a protective prayer. The sheer terror of the unknown, combined with the visible, horrifying effects of the disease, pushed people to seek solace and solutions wherever they could find them. Often in the realm of the miraculous or the magical, you might also encounter the practice of necromancy. Though this was widely condemned by the church and considered a dark art, this involved attempting to communicate with the dead to gain knowledge of the future or to uncover secrets. While often sensationalized in later fiction, in your medieval world, it was a terrifyingly real possibility. A desperate and dangerous attempt to breach the veil between life and death for forbidden knowledge. It highlights the extreme lengths some would go to in their quest for answers, even if it meant risking their immortal souls. This pervasive worldview, where the supernatural was an ever-present, active force, shaped everything from personal decisions to communal actions. It influenced how you planted your crops, how you treated illnesses, how you understood misfortune, and how you celebrated joy. It was a world brimming with unseen powers, both benevolent and malevolent, and your very survival depended on understanding, appeasing, or warding them off. You lived in a constant state of negotiation with these forces, a dance between faith, fear, and the desperate hope for a little bit of good luck. The demand for astrological and divinatory services was driven by the pervasive uncertainty of medieval life. When famine threatened, when war loomed, when disease ravaged communities, people desperately sought any advantage, any insight that could help them navigate the treacherous waters of existence. Astrology and divination offered a sense of order, a framework for understanding seemingly random events, and a glimmer of hope that the future, while not entirely controllable, could at least be glimpsed and prepared for. You wake again. The morning light still muted, but today there's a different rhythm in the air. It's a Sunday, or perhaps a feast day, and the distant pealing of the church bell calls you to worship. You pull on your best, which isn't saying much tunic. perhaps a slightly cleaner one, and join the stream of villagers making their way towards the small and stone church. This isn't just a place of prayer, it's the spiritual heart of your community, a beacon of order and divine truth in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable. Even the simple act of choosing a name for a child might involve a form of divination. Parents might consult an astrologer to pick a name that aligns with the child's birth chart, believing it would bring them good fortune and a prosperous life. Or they might look to the saint whose feast day coincided with the child's birth, believing that saint would offer special protection and guidance. Every significant life event, from birth to marriage to death, was often accompanied by some form of divinatory practice, seeking to imbue it with good fortune or to ward off ill omens. As you step inside, the cool, damp air envelops you, carrying the faint scent of incense and old stone. The priest, a figure of immense authority and learning in your world, stands at the altar, his voice echoing through the nave as he recites Latin prayers you only partially understand. Yet, the message is clear: God is supreme, and salvation lies in faith and adherence to his teachings. The Church, through its sacraments and its clergy, offers a direct conduit to the divine, a promise of eternal life that stands in stark contrast to the harsh realities of your earthly existence. The academic debate still rages about the relationship between medieval astrology and the nascent scientific inquiry of the time. While modern science would eventually reject astrology, many medieval scholars, including some highly respected astronomers, saw it as a legitimate field of study, an attempt to understand the intricate workings of the cosmos and its influence on earthly affairs. Was it a stepping stone to modern astronomy, or a conceptual dead end? It's a fascinating question about the evolution of scientific thought. Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, way back, to an era where the line between the tangible and the mystical was blurrier than a heavily fogged up window on a chilly morning. We're talking about the Middle Ages, a time when life was, let's just say, unpredictable. And the human mind, in its quest for understanding and control, often turned to the unseen. Imagine yourself there, a peasant in a muddy village, the scent of wood smoke and damp earth clinging to your clothes, the distant howl of a wolf a little too close for comfort. Or perhaps you're a noble, cloistered in a drafty castle, the flickering candlelight casting long, dancing shadows that seem to whisper secrets. In this world, every unexplained illness, every failed harvest, every sudden storm wasn't just bad luck, it was a sign, a message, a manifestation of forces beyond human comprehension. And trust me, if you were dropped into this world without your modern understanding of germs, meteorology, or basic plumbing, you'd probably be stocking up on lucky rabbit's feet and reciting incantations faster than you can say bubonic plague. You'd probably not survive a week. Honestly. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening, let me know your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes, not to the soft glow of your bedside lamp, but to the faint, smoky light filtering through a tiny, unglazed window. The air is thick with the smell of damp straw, unwashed bodies, and the ever-present aroma of cooking fires. You're lying on a rough pallet, the scratchy wool of your tunic a constant reminder of the simple, unyielding fabric of medieval life. This isn't a dream. This is your reality now, and it's a reality defined by profound uncertainty. Every day is a gamble. Ultimately, in your medieval world, astrology and divination are not just fringe beliefs. They are integral parts of the cultural landscape, offering a sense of order and predictability in a chaotic existence. They provide a means to interpret the signs of the cosmos, to glimpse the unfolding of fate, and to make decisions in a world where every choice feels weighted with unseen consequences. You live with a constant awareness of the celestial dance above you and the subtle whispers of fate around you, always seeking to understand, to predict, and to influence your destiny. But here's where things get interesting. While the church actively preaches against what it considers pagan practices, the old ways, the folk beliefs, the overt magic, it often finds itself in a delicate dance with the very superstitions it seeks to suppress. You see it in the way people cross themselves instinctively when a black cat crosses their path, or how they murmur a quick prayer to a specific saint before embarking on a dangerous journey. These aren't necessarily acts of defiance against the church. Rather, they are deeply ingrained habits, a pragmatic layering of protective measures. It's like having a firewall and an antivirus and a VPN. You just want to be sure, the chill of the morning air bites at your nose as you rise. But today, your focus isn't on the field or the loom. A persistent cough has settled in your chest, a dull ache behind your eyes, and a general malaise that saps your strength. In your medieval world, sickness isn't just a physical affliction. It's often seen as a spiritual battleground, a sign of imbalance, or even the result of malevolent influence. And so, you turn to the healers of your time, those who blend practical knowledge of herbs with a deep understanding of the unseen forces at play. The church's own teachings, as well aimed at spiritual purity, sometimes inadvertently fueled the very fears that gave rise to superstition. The emphasis on sin, on damnation, on the constant struggle between good and evil, painted a vivid picture of a world teeming with malevolent forces. Demons weren't just abstract concepts, they were real entities, lurking in the shadows, tempting souls and causing misfortune. The devil, a powerful adversary, was seen as actively working to undermine humanity. If a child fell ill or a crop failed, it wasn't just bad luck. It could be the devil's work, or the consequence of some unconfessed sin. This worldview, while rooted in theology, provided a fertile ground for superstitious interpretations of everyday calamities. You might seek out the village wise woman, a figure often revered for her knowledge, yet sometimes eyed with suspicion. Remember those witch fears. She knows the forest like the back of her hand, identifying plants by their scent and texture, understanding their properties. She might brew you a strong tea from willow bark, a common historical fact for pain relief, the precursor to aspirin. For you modern folks, she might apply poultices of warmed herbs to your aching joints, or give you a concoction of honey and ginger for your cough. Her remedies are often effective, born from centuries of empirical observation and passed down through generations. Consider the role of the sacraments. Baptism cleanses original sin and protects the newborn from demonic influence. Confession offers absolution and a chance to ward off divine punishment. The Eucharist, the body and blood of Christ, is believed to offer spiritual and even physical protection. These are core tenets of your faith, yet their perceived efficacy often blurred into a more magical understanding. You might believe that merely touching the consecrated host could cure an ailment, or that carrying a blessed rosary could protect you from highwaymen. The sacred objects and rituals of the Church, while intended for spiritual grace, were often imbued with a protective, almost talismanic power in the popular imagination. But her practice isn't purely scientific, not in the modern sense. As she prepares your draft, she might murmur an incantation, a quiet prayer to a saint known for healing, or a protective charm against the evil humors believed to cause illness. She might instruct you to wear a specific amulet, or to perform a small ritual at a crossroads at dawn. The physical remedy and the magical intervention are inextricably linked in her mind, and in yours. You don't question the blend, you simply desire relief, and you trust her holistic approach to wellness. It's like going to a doctor who also recommends a specific crystal for good vibes. You might raise an eyebrow, but if you feel better, who are you to argue? A common historical fact is the widespread veneration of saints and their relics. We touched on this briefly in the last part, but it bears repeating because it's a prime example of this blurring. Every village, every town, every individual had patron saints. You might have a special devotion to Saint Christopher for safe travel, or Saint Apollonia for toothaches. The stories of their miracles, often embellished over centuries, reinforce the belief in their direct intervention in earthly affairs. And their relics, whether a bone fragment, a lock of hair, or a piece of their clothing, were considered incredibly potent. Pilgrimages to cathedrals housing these relics were arduous journeys, undertaken with the fervent hope of a miracle. You might spend months walking, enduring hardship, just for the chance to touch a saint's finger bone, believing it held the power to heal your ailing mother or ensure your safe return from war. The sheer volume of relics and the lengths people went to acquire or venerate them speaks volumes about this blend of piety and perceived magical efficacy. Consider the concept of the four humors, a common medical theory throughout the Middle Ages, inherited from ancient Greek and Roman physicians. You are taught that your body is composed of four primary fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Illness is believed to result from an imbalance of these humors. Too much phlegm might cause a cold, while an excess of yellow bile could lead to a fever. Treatments are designed to restore this balanced bleeding, to reduce excess blood, purges to expel unwanted humors, or specific diets to adjust their levels. While this theory seems quaint to modern medicine, it was a rational framework for understanding the body within their limited knowledge, and it often intertwined with astrological beliefs. Remember how different body parts were governed by different planets. The Church, in its efforts to convert pagan populations, often adopted and repurposed existing pagan sites and festivals. A sacred grove might become the site of a new church. A pagan spring festival might be transformed into a Christian feast day. This strategic assimilation, while effective in spreading Christianity, also meant that many pre-Christian beliefs and practices subtly seeped into the new religious framework. You might still leave offerings at a certain ancient tree, even if you now also attend Mass. The old gods and spirits didn't simply vanish. They often morphed into local saints, fairies, or even demons, continuing to exert an influence on the popular imagination. It's like when a new operating system comes out, but you still keep using some of your old familiar and maybe slightly buggy apps because you're just used to them. An obscure detail you might find fascinating is the use of touch pieces or cramp rings. These were rings often made from silver that were believed to cure cramps or epilepsy simply by being worn. Their power was thought to come from being blessed by a saint, or even by a monarch, particularly in England, where the royal touch was believed to cure scrofula, a form of tuberculosis. This highlights the belief that divine or inherent power could be transferred through physical contact with a sacred person or object, offering a simple yet deeply superstitious remedy for common ailments. An obscure detail you might encounter is the use of charm books or grimoires by some clergy members. While the church officially condemned magic, some priests, particularly in rural areas, were known to possess and even use books containing spells, incantations, and astrological charts. These weren't necessarily for dark magic, but often for practical purposes like finding lost items, healing minor ailments, or protecting crops. It highlights the pragmatic reality that even within the ecclesiastical hierarchy, the lines between sanctioned religious practice and what we might call folk magic were sometimes incredibly blurred. It's like your IT guy secretly using a cracked version of Photoshop, even though the company has a strict policy against it. He just needs to get the job done. Right? The academic debate still rages among historians about the true efficacy of medieval medicine. While some remedies, like willow bark for pain, had genuine pharmacological properties, others were based purely on superstition or the placebo effect. To what extent did the belief in the magical aspects of healing contribute to actual recovery? And how much of the success was simply the body's natural ability to heal, attributed to the intervention of charms and prayers? It's a complex question. Trying to disentangle the genuine medical knowledge from the pervasive superstitious practices, the very architecture of the medieval church reinforced a sense of awe and the supernatural. Soaring arches, stained glass windows depicting biblical scenes, and intricate carvings of saints and gargoyles created an immersive, otherworldly atmosphere. The flickering candlelight, the chanting, the smell of incense, it all contributed to an experience designed to transport you from the mundane world to the divine. This sensory overload, combined with the priest's pronouncements, reinforced the idea of a powerful, unseen realm that directly influenced your life. You weren't just hearing about God, you were experiencing His presence, and the presence of His angels and demons, in a very tangible way. You might also encounter the practice of exorcism for physical ailments, particularly those involving unusual symptoms or mental distress. If someone in your community suffers from seizures, or speaks in tongues, or experiences sudden, violent outbursts, it might be believed that a demon is causing their illness. A priest would be called upon to perform an exorcism, a ritual designed to cast out the malevolent spirit believed to be responsible. This highlights the deep connection between physical and spiritual well-being in the medieval mind, where illness could be a sign of demonic oppression as much as a bodily imbalance. The academic debate still rages among historians about the extent to which the medieval church actively promoted or tolerated certain forms of popular superstition. While official decrees often condemned magical practices, the reality on the ground was far more nuanced. Did the church genuinely believe in the power of relics? Or were they primarily a tool for consolidating power and attracting pilgrims? To what degree did local clergy turn a blind eye to folk practices that didn't directly contradict core Christian doctrine, or even incorporate them into local religious life? It's a complex interplay of top-down theology and bottom-up popular belief. The use of saints' relics for healing is a common historical fact. As we touched upon earlier, you might travel to a distant monastery to touch a bone of Saint Roch, hoping it would protect you from the plague, or to a cathedral housing a piece of the true cross, believing it would heal your crippled leg. The belief in the miraculous power of these relics was immense, driving pilgrimages and fostering a thriving trade in sacred objects. The very act of journeying, of enduring hardship for the sake of a cure, often contributed to a sense of spiritual renewal and a perceived improvement in health. Regardless of the relic's actual efficacy, your life is punctuated by the church calendar. Feast days, fast days, and holy days dictate the rhythm of your year. These aren't just arbitrary dates. They are imbued with spiritual significance and often carry their own set of associated superstitions. You might avoid certain activities on a particular saint's day, believing it would bring bad luck. You might perform specific rituals during Advent or Lent to ensure spiritual purity and ward off temptation. The church, in its efforts to structure your spiritual life, inadvertently created a framework within which many superstitious beliefs could flourish, attaching themselves to specific dates and observances. Consider the role of amulets and talismans, specifically for health. Beyond general protection, you might wear a specific stone believed to cure kidney stones, or a piece of parchment inscribed with a magical symbol thought to ward off fevers. These weren't just decorative, they were active agents in your health regimen, believed to directly influence your physical well-being. The line between a religious medal and a magical amulet was often blurred, both offering a sense of protection and hope in the face of illness. It's like wearing your lucky socks to a job interview, but with the added belief that the socks are actively repelling bad vibes from the hiring manager. Consider the concept of curses and blessings within a religious context. The priest could bless your fields, your livestock, or your home, imbuing them with divine protection. Conversely, excommunication from the church was the gravest punishment, believed to condemn your soul to eternal damnation and bring earthly misfortune. This power, to bless or to curse, was seen as a direct manifestation of divine authority, but it also mirrored the folk belief in the power of words and intentions to influence reality. If a priest's blessing could protect you, then a witch's curse could surely harm you. The two concepts, divine and magical, often operated on parallel tracks in the popular mind. The academic debate still rages about the ethical considerations surrounding medieval medical practices. While modern medicine emphasizes informed consent and evidence-based treatment, medieval healers operated within a different ethical framework, often prioritizing spiritual well-being and traditional beliefs alongside practical remedies. To what extent were patients truly empowered in their healthcare decisions, and how much was dictated by the prevailing superstitious and religious norms? It's a challenging question for modern historians to grapple with. The church also played a significant role in shaping the perception of evil. While pagan traditions often featured a pantheon of spirits, some benevolent and some mischievous, Christianity introduced a more defined, monolithic concept of evil embodied by Satan and his legions of demons. This clear delineation of good versus evil provided a framework for understanding misfortune. If something bad happened, it wasn't just random, it was either a test from God, a punishment for sin, or the direct work of demonic forces. This simplified, yet terrifying, explanation often led people to seek out religious remedies, prayers, exorcisms, blessings, to combat these perceived spiritual attacks. You might also find yourself participating in communal healing rituals. If a plague descends upon your village, the entire community might engage in a procession, carrying crosses and relics, praying for divine intervention. or perhaps a ritual cleansing of the village, involving fires and specific herbs, would be performed to purify the air and drive away the bad humors or demonic influences believed to be causing the disease. These communal efforts, while rooted in superstition, also provided a powerful sense of solidarity and hope in the face of overwhelming adversity. Even the architecture of cathedrals, with their gargoyles and grotesque figures, served a dual purpose. While they might have been intended to ward off evil spirits or to depict the horrors of sin, they also reinforced the visual language of a world populated by strange and terrifying creatures. You, as a medieval peasant, would see these figures and understand them not just as artistic representations, but as echoes of the very real, unseen forces that lurked beyond the church walls and sometimes even within them. It's like going to a horror movie and then being surprised when you're a little jumpy walking home in the dark. The doctrine of signatures, an obscure detail, was a fascinating belief that God had marked plants with signs indicating their medicinal use. For example, a plant with heart-shaped leaves might be used to treat heart ailments, or a yellow-flowered plant might be used for jaundice, a yellowing of the skin. While scientifically unfounded, it was a logical system within their worldview, suggesting that the divine hand had provided clues in nature for human healing. It's like finding a treasure map where the X marks the spot, except the map is a plant and the treasure is a cure for your headache. The church's struggle against heresy also inadvertently fueled a climate of fear and suspicion, which could easily spill over into accusations of witchcraft and other superstitious practices. If someone deviated from orthodox doctrine, they were not just wrong, they were potentially in league with the devil. This created an environment where unusual behavior, unexplained misfortune, or even just being a bit eccentric could lead to accusations of demonic influence or magical wrongdoing. The lines between theological error and outright sorcery became dangerously blurred, often with tragic consequences for those accused. The constant threat of death, particularly from diseases that swept through communities with terrifying speed and ferocity, fueled a desperate search for any form of healing. When a loved one fell ill, you would try everything: prayers, herbal remedies, charms, pilgrimages, and even the more extreme practices like corpse medicine. Remember that gruesome detail from before. The sheer vulnerability of human life in the Middle Ages made people incredibly receptive to any belief or practice that offered a glimmer of hope for recovery or protection. One fascinating aspect is the use of holy water, blessed by a priest. Holy water was believed to have protective and cleansing properties. You might sprinkle it in your home to ward off evil, or drink it to cure an illness. It was a tangible, accessible form of divine power, a small piece of the sacred that you could bring into your everyday life. This practice, while sanctioned by the church, also resonated deeply with older pagan beliefs in the purifying and protective powers of natural springs and consecrated waters. It's another example of how the new faith often built upon, rather than entirely replaced, existing popular beliefs. The academic debate still rages about the interplay between individual healers and institutional medicine. While the village wise woman was a common figure, there were also monastic infirmaries and early universities that taught more formal medical theories. To what extent did these different approaches to healing coexist, conflict, or influence each other? And how did the common person navigate this diverse landscape of medical and magical options? It's a complex picture of healthcare in a pre-scientific era. The widespread literacy was low, meaning most people learned about their faith and the world through oral tradition, sermons and visual imagery, the stories told by priests, the stained glass windows, the morality plays. These were the primary conduits of knowledge. And in these narratives, the supernatural was a constant presence. Angels and demons, miracles and curses, divine interventions and demonic temptations were not abstract theological concepts. They were vivid, tangible realities. This oral and visual culture further cemented the pervasive belief in a world alive with unseen forces, making it difficult to separate religious dogma from popular superstitious interpretations. Ultimately, in your medieval world, healing is not just a matter of physical remedies, it's a holistic endeavor, deeply intertwined with the spiritual and the supernatural. You turn to herbs and poultices, but also to prayers and charms, believing that illness is a manifestation of unseen forces that require both earthly and divine intervention. Your quest for health is a constant negotiation with the mystical, a desperate hope that the wisdom of the ages, combined with a little bit of magic, can keep the shadows of sickness at bay. The church, in its vast organizational structure, also provided a framework for dealing with misfortune. If your child was sick, you might pray to a saint, but you would also seek the help of a local healer, who might employ both herbal remedies and incantations. If your crops failed, you would pray for divine mercy, but you might also participate in communal rituals to appease the land spirits. The church provided a spiritual safety net, but it didn't always negate the need for other, more traditional, and often superstitious forms of intervention. It was a multi-layered approach to survival, a bit like having both a traditional doctor and a really good chiropractor. You use whatever works. As you navigate the daily challenges of your medieval life, constantly seeking remedies for illness and protection from unseen threats, you also find yourself in a world where the very objects of your faith, the saints and their relics, are imbued with a profound, almost magical power. These aren't just figures of distant reverence. They are active participants in your life. Their intercession sought for everything from healing the sick to ensuring a safe journey. The academic debate still rages about the precise mechanisms through which the Church's teachings, despite their official condemnation of superstition, contributed to its persistence. Did the emphasis on a literal devil and active demonic forces inadvertently empower the belief in witches and curses? Or was it simply a reflection of an already deeply ingrained worldview that the Church, for all its power, could not entirely reshape? It's a chicken and egg question, trying to disentangle cause and effect in the complex tapestry of medieval belief. You recall the stories of saints, passed down through generations, tales of miraculous cures, divine interventions, and heroic acts of faith. Saint Christopher, the patron saint of travelers, is invoked before a long journey, his image often carried as a protective amulet. Saint Sebastian, pierced with arrows, is prayed to for protection against plague. These narratives aren't just moral lessons. They are living testaments to the power of divine grace, and the ability of certain individuals to channel that power for the benefit of humanity. Ultimately, the Church in the Middle Ages was not a monolithic entity that simply eradicated superstition. Instead, it engaged in a complex, often contradictory relationship with it. It provided a powerful framework for understanding the world, a source of comfort and hope, but its very doctrines and practices sometimes created space for older, more magical beliefs to persist and even flourish. You lived in a world where the sacred and the superstitious were often two sides of the same coin, both offering pathways to navigate a life fraught with uncertainty and the ever-present mystery of the unseen. The veneration of saints is a common historical fact, deeply embedded in medieval Christian practice. Pilgrimages to holy sites, where the bodies or relics of saints are preserved, are arduous journeys undertaken by people from all walks of life. You might save for years, enduring hardship and danger, just to visit the shrine of St. Thomas Becket in Canterbury, or the tomb of St. James in Compostela. The act of pilgrimage itself is seen as an act of penance and devotion. But the ultimate goal is often to experience a miracle, to touch the sacred, and to receive a blessing that can transform your life. You step out of the church, the echo of the priest's sermon still lingering in your ears, a comforting presence in the vast, untamed world. But as you walk back towards your humble dwelling, your gaze instinctively drifts to the sky. A sudden darkening of the clouds, a rumble of thunder in the distance. These aren't just meteorological phenomena to your medieval mind. They are portents, messages, manifestations of forces far beyond human control, often interpreted through the lens of the supernatural. Imagine a sudden, unseasonal frost that devastates the spring crops, turning vibrant green shoots into brittle, blackened husks. To you, this isn't merely a cold snap. It's a sign of divine displeasure, or perhaps the malevolent work of a frost giant, or an angry spirit of winter. You might recall stories passed down through generations, tales of ancient beings who control the seasons, and your immediate reaction isn't to consult a calendar or a thermometer, but to seek out a remedy in the spiritual realm, perhaps a procession to the fields, a special prayer, or even an offering to appease the unseen forces you believe are responsible. It's like your computer suddenly crashes, and instead of checking the power cable, you assume it's because you didn't sacrifice enough virtual goats to the server gods. Just kidding. Please don't sacrifice goats, virtual or otherwise, to your server. Every natural disaster, every inexplicable event, finds its explanation in the invisible world that surrounds you. A devastating flood that sweeps away homes and lives isn't just heavy rainfall, it's the river god's fury, or a punishment for the sins of the community. An earthquake, rare but terrifying, isn't tectonic plates shifting, it's the earth groaning in agony, or the restless stirring of a giant beast beneath the ground, or even a sign of the end times. These events, so utterly beyond your capacity to prevent or even fully comprehend, demand a supernatural explanation, a way to fit them into a coherent worldview. Even if that coherence is built on fear and awe, consider the sheer variety of relics. Not just bones, but pieces of the true cross, thorns from Christ's crown, even vials of the Virgin Mary's milk. The demand for these objects was immense, leading to a thriving, though often unregulated, market. Forgeries were rampant, with unscrupulous individuals creating fake relics to capitalize on people's fervent faith. Yet even a fake relic, if believed to be genuine, could still provide psychological comfort and a sense of divine connection. The power, in many ways, lay in the belief itself. The heavens themselves are a canvas for divine and demonic signs. Comets, those fiery streaks across the night sky, are not just celestial bodies. They are harbingers of war, plague, or the death of kings. Eclipses, when the sun or moon is swallowed by an unseen shadow, are terrifying omens believed to signify divine wrath or the triumph of evil. You might gather with your neighbors, clutching protective charms, watching the sky with a mixture of terror and fascination, convinced that the fate of your world hangs in the balance. The stars, too, are not just distant lights. They are believed to influence human destiny, their positions at your birth determining your temperament and future. This belief in celestial influence, while later developing into the more complex pseudoscience of astrology, was deeply rooted in the idea that the cosmos was a living, breathing entity, constantly communicating with humanity through its movements and phenomena. An obscure detail you might not know is the practice of ordeals by relic. In some medieval legal systems, particularly for minor disputes or accusations where evidence was scarce, a person's guilt or innocence might be determined by an ordeal. This could involve touching a hot iron or plunging a hand into boiling water, with the belief that God would miraculously protect the innocent. Sometimes these ordeals involved sacred relics. For example, an accused person might be required to swear an oath on a saint's relic, with the belief that if they lied, the saint's power would inflict immediate punishment or reveal their guilt. It highlights how deeply intertwined religious belief, superstition, and the pursuit of justice were in this era. A common historical fact is the widespread belief in miasma theory as an explanation for disease. While not strictly supernatural, it perfectly illustrates the medieval mind's attempt to explain the unseen. People believed that diseases like the plague were caused by bad air, noxious fumes or vapors rising from decaying matter, swamps, or even from the breath of the sick. This led to practices like burning aromatic herbs, carrying pomander oranges studded with cloves, or avoiding certain areas believed to be infected with this foul air. While we now know germs are the culprit, this theory was a rational attempt within their limited understanding to explain the invisible spread of illness, and it often intertwined with the idea that evil spirits or divine punishment could also contribute to the bad air. The academic debate still rages among historians about the Church's official stance on relics. While the Church promoted their veneration, it also struggled with the proliferation of fraudulent relics and the more overtly superstitious practices associated with them. Did the Church genuinely believe in the inherent magical power of these objects? Or did it see them primarily as tools for inspiring piety and consolidating its authority? It's a complex interplay of theological doctrine, popular belief, and institutional control. Consider the changing seasons. The harshness of winter, with its biting cold and scarcity of food, is not just a meteorological cycle, it's a period when the veil between worlds thins, when spirits are more active, and when the forces of darkness hold greater sway. The return of spring, with its burgeoning life and warmth, is a triumph of light over darkness. a time for rituals to ensure fertility and abundance. You participate in these seasonal rites, not just as tradition, but as a genuine attempt to influence the natural world, to coax it into providing for your survival. It's a constant negotiation with the unseen powers that govern the very rhythm of your life. You might also witness the practice of votive offerings. If you recover from an illness after praying to a particular saint, you might leave a small offering at their shrine, a wax candle, a small silver effigy of the healed limb, or even a simple piece of bread. These offerings are acts of gratitude, but also a form of reciprocal exchange, a way to acknowledge the saint's intervention and to encourage continued favor. It's like leaving a 5-star review for a product that actually worked, but with more spiritual significance and less aggressive pop-up ads. An obscure detail you might encounter is the belief in elf shot. If a person or animal suddenly fell ill with an unexplained ailment, particularly one involving sharp, localized pain, it was often attributed to being shot by an invisible elf arrow. This wasn't just a poetic metaphor, it was a literal belief that mischievous or malevolent elves could inflict harm from a distance. Remedies for elf shot often involved countercharms, special herbs, or even rituals to appease the elves, highlighting the pervasive belief in hidden magical beings influencing everyday health. It's like your Wi-Fi suddenly dropping out, and instead of blaming your router, you blame a tiny, invisible gnome messing with your signal? And honestly, sometimes it feels like that, doesn't it? The power of relics extended beyond individual healing to communal protection. If your village was threatened by plague or by invading armies, the local church might bring out its most prized relics in a solemn procession, parading them through the streets, believing their sacred power would ward off disaster. These were desperate acts of faith, a collective appeal to the divine through the intercession of the saints, a tangible manifestation of the community's hope and fear. The academic debate still rages among historians about the precise origin of some of these supernatural explanations for natural phenomena. Were they remnants of pre-Christian pagan beliefs that simply adapted to the Christian worldview? Or did the church's emphasis on a literal devil and active demonic forces provide a new framework for interpreting misfortune, effectively Christianizing existing fears? It's a complex interplay, making it difficult to draw a clear line between ancient folklore and newly emerging theological interpretations. Consider the concept of saintly patronage. Beyond general protection, specific saints were invoked for specific needs. Saint Blaise for throat ailments, Saint Lucy for eye problems, Saint Giles for cripples. This specialization allowed people to tailor their prayers and devotions to their immediate needs, creating a vast network of spiritual intercessors. It's like having a dedicated customer service representative for every single one of your life's problems. But with significantly less hold music, you live in a world where the very landscape is alive with unseen entities. Forests are not just collections of trees. They are places where fairies might dance, where trolls might lurk under bridges, or where the spirits of the dead might wander. Rivers have their own guardians, demanding respect and sometimes offerings. Mountains are ancient, mysterious places, perhaps home to giants or dragons. You learn from childhood which places are safe, which are sacred, and which are best avoided after dark. Your understanding of geography is intertwined with folklore, every landmark possessing a story, a legend, and a potential supernatural significance. The academic debate still rages about the social function of relics. Beyond their spiritual significance, do they also serve to reinforce social hierarchies, with powerful nobles and church institutions accumulating the most valuable relics? And how did the competition for relics among different churches and monasteries influence their economic and political power? It's a fascinating area of study, exploring the intersection of faith, power, and material culture. Consider the behavior of animals. A dog howling at the moon might not just be expressing itself. It could be sensing a ghostly presence or foretelling a death. A flock of birds suddenly taking flight could be a warning of impending danger. Certain animals, like owls or ravens, are often associated with ill omens or dark magic, while others, like swallows, are seen as bringing good luck. You observe these behaviors with a keen eye, interpreting them as messages from the unseen world, guiding your actions and shaping your fears. It's like trying to understand your cat's cryptic meows, but with significantly higher stakes for your personal safety, You might also encounter the belief in holy wells or sacred springs dedicated to specific saints. These natural water sources were believed to have healing properties, particularly if a saint had visited or blessed them. People would travel to these wells, drink the water, or bathe in it, leaving offerings and praying for cures. This practice, yes, while often incorporating Christian elements, also has deep roots in pre-Christian reverence for natural water sources, highlighting the enduring blend of old and new beliefs. Even the weather, the most unpredictable of natural forces, is often attributed to supernatural agency. A sudden, violent hailstorm that destroys crops isn't just a weather pattern, it's a direct act of divine wrath, or perhaps the work of a weather witch. Prolonged drought isn't just a lack of rain, it's a curse, or a punishment for sin, or a sign that the land itself is dying. People would engage in elaborate rituals, prayers, and even processions to appease the heavens, begging for rain or for the cessation of destructive storms. The desperate need for a bountiful harvest and protection from natural calamities drove a deep reliance on supernatural explanations and interventions. The sheer physical presence of relics, often housed in magnificent cathedrals and churches, served as a constant reminder of the divine presence in the world. These sacred objects, often beautifully adorned and displayed, were powerful symbols of faith, drawing pilgrims and contributing to the immense wealth and influence of the church. They were not just objects of veneration, they were economic drivers, architectural inspirations, and focal points of communal life. The fear of famine, a constant specter in the medieval world, amplified these beliefs. When food supplies dwindled and hunger gnawed at your belly, it was easy to believe that malevolent forces were at work, or that God was punishing the community. This desperation often led to extreme measures, including scapegoating individuals, accusing them of witchcraft for causing the famine or engaging in increasingly fervent and sometimes bizarre rituals to beg for divine intervention. The direct link between unpredictable natural events and the very real threat of starvation made the supernatural explanations all the more compelling and terrifying. The academic debate still rages about the psychological impact of relic veneration. Did the belief in their power provide genuine comfort and hope in a harsh world, even if the physical cures were often attributable to the placebo effect or natural healing? And how did the collective experience of pilgrimage and shared devotion reinforce these beliefs, creating a powerful sense of community and spiritual solidarity? It's a complex interplay of individual psychology and collective faith. You might hear stories of will-o'-the-wisps, mysterious lights seen flickering over marshes at night. To us, it's methane gas igniting. To you, it's a mischievous fairy leading travelers astray, or perhaps the lantern of a lost soul. These simple, explainable phenomena become imbued with a fantastical, often sinister meaning, adding to the rich tapestry of your supernatural world. Every unexplained light, every strange sound in the darkness, becomes a potential encounter with the unseen. Ultimately, in your medieval world, saints and their relics are far more than just historical figures or inert objects. They are living conduits to the divine, active participants in your daily struggles, offering hope, healing, and protection in a world filled with uncertainty. Your devotion to them is a blend of fervent faith and deeply ingrained superstition, a pragmatic approach to navigating a life where the line between the miraculous and the magical is often indistinguishable. The academic debate still rages about the precise role of individual agency versus communal belief in shaping these supernatural interpretations. Did individuals simply adopt the prevailing superstitions of their communities? Or did their personal experiences of inexplicable phenomena lead them to independently develop similar beliefs? It's a complex interplay between social conditioning and individual interpretation, making it difficult to fully understand the origins and persistence of these fears. As the sun rises, casting long shadows across the fields, you begin your day, just as you always do. But in your medieval world, every aspect of your life, from the planting of crops to the administration of justice, is permeated by a deep-seated belief in the supernatural. Superstition isn't a separate compartment of your mind, it's woven into the very fabric of your daily existence, influencing decisions both mundane and monumental. Ultimately, your medieval world is one where the natural and the supernatural are inextricably linked. There's no clear dividing line, no scientific explanation to neatly categorize phenomena. Every gust of wind, every flash of lightning, every strange animal behavior is a potential message, a sign, a manifestation of the unseen forces that govern your existence. This constant awareness of the invisible, this pervasive fear of the unknown, shapes your every action, your every thought, as you navigate a life utterly dependent on the whims of a world far more mysterious and magical than you can ever truly comprehend. Imagine you are a farmer, preparing your fields for planting. You don't just scatter seeds and hope for the best. You might first walk the perimeter of your field, sprinkling holy water. Remember that blessed water from the church, or burying a small charm to protect the nascent crops from blight, pests, or the evil eye. You might consult the lunar calendar, believing that planting during a specific phase of the moon will ensure a more bountiful harvest. The success of your livelihood, and indeed your very survival, depends on the whims of nature, and you leave nothing to chance, invoking both divine blessing and ancient folk magic to ensure prosperity. It's like a modern farmer checking the weather app, but also sacrificing a small, slightly confused garden gnome to the Wi-Fi router for better signal. Again, no actual gnomes were harmed. Just for the record, as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a different kind of anxiety begins to settle over the village. The natural world, with its unpredictable storms and diseases, is one thing. But the unseen world, the realm of spirits and magic, requires a more proactive defense. This is where charms, amulets, and rituals step in, offering a tangible means to influence the intangible, to protect yourself and your loved ones from the myriad of perceived threats lurking in the shadows. The agricultural year, with its cycles of planting, growing, and harvesting, is punctuated by numerous superstitious practices. You might tie red ribbons to the tails of your livestock to protect them from disease or witchcraft. When a cow gives birth, you might place a piece of iron in the stall to ward off malevolent spirits that could harm the calf. The first sheaf of grain harvested might be treated with special reverence, perhaps hung in the barn as a protective charm for the rest of the harvest. These rituals are not just quaint customs. They are seen as vital interventions, ensuring the fertility of the land and the health of your animals. You might reach for the small leather pouch you wear around your neck. Its contents a carefully chosen assortment of protective items. Perhaps it holds a dried piece of rowan wood, believed to ward off evil spirits and witches, or a tiny, intricately carved bone, a relic from a saint or a powerful animal, imbued with protective energy. Maybe it's a simple stone with a natural hole, a hagstone, thought to protect against nightmares and the malevolent gaze of witches. These aren't just trinkets. They are your personal shields, your spiritual body armor in a world where danger can strike from any direction, seen or unseen. A common historical fact is the widespread belief in trial by ordeal as a form of justice. While we touched on ordeals by relic earlier, this broader practice was a direct appeal to divine judgment. If someone was accused of a crime and evidence was lacking, they might be subjected to an ordeal, perhaps carrying a hot iron a certain distance, or being thrown into a body of water if they sank. They were innocent if they floated, guilty as the water rejected them. The belief was that God would intervene to reveal the truth, protecting the innocent and condemning the guilty. This wasn't just a legal procedure, it was a deeply religious and superstitious act, trusting in supernatural intervention to deliver justice where human evidence failed. The creation and use of these charms are deeply personal, often passed down through families, each generation adding its own layer of belief and experience. Your grandmother might have taught you a specific incantation to whisper over a child's cradle to protect them from changelings, those mischievous fairies who, as you remember, were thought to swap human babies for their own sickly offspring. You might tie a red thread around the wrist of a newborn, believing its vibrant color repels evil, or place a sprig of dill under their pillow to ensure a peaceful sleep, free from demonic visitations. These are acts of love and desperation, attempts to safeguard the most vulnerable in a world where infant mortality is tragically common. Consider the construction of a new building. Whether it's a humble hut or a grand cathedral, you wouldn't just lay the foundation, you might bury a protective charm beneath the cornerstone, or even sacrifice a small animal. Remember that obscure detail about burying animals under foundations to ensure its stability, and to ward off evil spirits that might try to inhabit the structure. The very act of building is seen as an invitation to unseen forces, and precautions must be taken to ensure the space is blessed and protected. Consider the role of specific plants and herbs. While many were used for their medicinal properties, we'll delve into that later, others held purely magical significance. Mistletoe, for instance, wasn't just for kissing. It was a powerful protective plant, thought to ward off lightning, fire, and evil spirits. You might hang it above your doorway, or carry a small piece with you on a journey. Garlic, with its pungent aroma, was believed to repel vampires and other night creatures, a common sight hanging in braids outside homes. These weren't just folklore, they were practical applications of a magical worldview, using the inherent properties of nature to influence the unseen. An obscure detail you might find surprising is the practice of bee charming. Bees were considered sacred creatures in some areas, and it was believed that if a new swarm was acquired, or if a colony was moved, a specific charm or incantation had to be recited to prevent them from flying away or becoming unproductive. This often involved whispering to the bees, informing them of significant events like a death in the family, or singing specific rhymes to encourage their loyalty and honey production. It highlights the deep respect and superstitious reverence people held for creatures vital to their survival. A common historical fact is the widespread use of apotropaic symbols carved into buildings or objects. You've already seen the grotesque faces on pumpkins, but imagine similar carvings on the wooden beams of your house, or etched into the stone lintel above your door. These weren't just decorative, they were believed to literally turn away evil from the Greek apotropaios, meaning averting evil. Gargoyles on churches, while serving as waterspouts, were also thought to scare away demons. These architectural elements, often terrifying in their depiction, were a constant visual reminder of the battle between good and evil, and humanity's active role in defending itself. The academic debate still rages among historians about the true motivations behind some of these pervasive daily superstitions. Were they primarily driven by a genuine belief in the supernatural? Or were they more about community cohesion, reinforcing social norms, and providing psychological comfort in a world of uncertainty? To what extent did people consciously separate their religious practices from their superstitious ones? Or was it all part of a seamless, pragmatic approach to life? It's a challenging question to answer, given the lack of direct testimony from the common people of the time. Rituals, too, play a crucial role in your daily life. Before embarking on a long journey, you might visit the local priest for a blessing, but you might also perform a small personal ritual, perhaps spitting 3 times over your left shoulder for good luck, or carrying a piece of blessed bread. When a new field is plowed, you might walk its perimeter, scattering salt or holy water, reciting ancient rhymes to ensure a bountiful harvest and protect it from pests or blight. These are not just symbolic gestures, they are seen as active interventions, influencing the unseen forces that govern the success or failure of your endeavors. Even your personal hygiene, limited as it is, might be influenced by superstition. You might avoid bathing on certain days, believing it would bring bad luck or make you susceptible to illness. Or you might perform small rituals when cutting your hair or nails, believing that these discarded parts of your body could be used against you in a magical curse. The body itself is seen as vulnerable to unseen influences, and precautions must be taken to protect it from harm. It's like refusing to walk under a ladder, but for your entire existence. As you stand before a reliquary, a beautifully crafted container holding a fragment of a saint's bone or a piece of their clothing, you feel a profound sense of awe. This isn't just a bone, it's a conduit to the divine, a tangible link to a powerful spiritual entity. You might press your forehead against the reliquary, or touch it with a cloth, believing that the saint's power will transfer to you, offering healing, protection, or good fortune. The line between religious veneration and a more magical understanding of power is incredibly fine here, almost imperceptible. It's like believing your favorite celebrity's autograph will give you superpowers. I mean, it probably won't. But you can dream, right? Consider the rites of passage. Birth, marriage, and death are all surrounded by a complex web of superstitious practices designed to ensure good fortune, ward off evil, and guide souls to the afterlife. At a wedding, you might throw grain over the newlyweds for fertility, or tie old shoes to their carriage for good luck. At a funeral, you might place coins on the eyes of the deceased to pay their way into the afterlife, or leave food out for their spirit. These aren't just traditions, they are seen as vital steps in navigating the spiritual transitions of life. The academic debate still rages among historians about the degree to which these charms and rituals were seen as distinct from, or integrated into, mainstream Christian practice. Did the church actively condemn all forms of folk magic, or did it tolerate, and even subtly incorporate, some of these practices, particularly when they aligned with broader Christian themes of protection and divine intervention? It's a nuanced discussion, recognizing that the lived experience of faith in the Middle Ages was often a blend of official doctrine and deeply ingrained popular custom. The concept of luck permeates everyday language and action. You might say "God bless you" after a sneeze, not just as a polite gesture, but from the genuine belief that a sneeze momentarily leaves your soul vulnerable to demonic entry. You might knock on wood after boasting, to avert the envy of spirits or the wrath of fate. These small, seemingly insignificant actions are ingrained reflexes, born from centuries of belief in the active influence of unseen forces on your daily fortunes. Consider the power of words, incantations, prayers. And blessings are not just spoken words, they are believed to carry inherent power, capable of influencing reality. You might whisper a protective charm over your sleeping child, believing the words themselves form a shield around them. A priest's blessing over your fields is not just a wish, it's an active invocation of divine power to ensure their fertility. Conversely, a curse, spoken with malicious intent, is feared for its perceived ability to inflict harm. This belief in the magical power of language is deeply ingrained, making every utterance, every prayer, every oath, a potentially potent act. The academic debate still rages about the role of literacy and the persistence of superstition. Did the widespread illiteracy mean that folk beliefs, passed down orally, were more resistant to official church doctrine? Or did the limited access to formal education simply mean that people relied more heavily on traditional, often superstitious, explanations for the world around them? It's a complex relationship, where the spread of knowledge and the persistence of ancient customs constantly intertwined. Even seemingly mundane objects could be imbued with magical power through ritual. A simple piece of bread, blessed by a priest, becomes holy bread, believed to protect against illness or evil. A candle lit in church isn't just a source of light, it's a symbol of divine presence. Its flame believed to ward off darkness and evil. These objects, through their association with sacred rituals, transcend their ordinary nature and become conduits for supernatural influence. It's like believing your old, beat-up smartphone will suddenly get better reception if you put a fancy new case on it. Hey, sometimes it feels like it works, right? You might even see superstition influencing trade and commerce. A merchant might refuse to close a deal on a Friday, remember Friday the 13th. Anyone, believing it would bring bad luck to the transaction. Or a craftsman might incorporate protective symbols into his wares, believing they would make his products more durable or bring good fortune to the buyer. The success of business ventures, like everything else, is seen as being influenced by unseen forces, and every possible measure is taken to ensure a favorable outcome. The concept of sympathetic magic is also prevalent. This is the idea that like affects like, or that things that were once in contact continue to influence each other. If you wanted to harm an enemy, you might create a small effigy of them and stick pins in it, believing that whatever happened to the effigy would happen to the person. Conversely, if you wanted to heal someone, you might use a piece of their hair or clothing in a healing ritual, believing that the connection would transfer the healing energy. This isn't just childish play, it's a deeply held belief in the interconnectedness of all things, and the ability to manipulate those connections through ritual. The very concept of time is often imbued with superstitious meaning. Certain days of the week are considered lucky or unlucky for specific activities. The dog days of summer are avoided for travel or major undertakings, believed to be a time of illness and misfortune. The changing of the seasons, as we discussed, brings its own set of rituals and beliefs, each designed to align human activity with the perceived rhythms of the cosmos and the unseen world. The use of lucky charms extends to almost every aspect of life. a rabbit's foot carried in your pocket for good fortune, a four-leaf clover pressed between the pages of your prayer book to bring prosperity, a horseshoe nailed above your door, open end up, to catch and hold good luck. These are not just quaint traditions. They are serious attempts to tilt the odds in your favor in a world where the odds are often stacked against you. Every small advantage, every perceived boost from the unseen world is eagerly embraced. The academic debate still rages about the relationship between superstition and social control. Did the pervasive belief in witches and demons and the fear of divine punishment serve as a form of social control, encouraging conformity and discouraging dissent? Or was it primarily a reflection of genuine anxieties and a desperate attempt to make sense of a harsh and unpredictable world? It's a nuanced discussion, recognizing that beliefs can serve multiple functions within a society. An obscure detail you might stumble upon is the practice of corpse medicine. This involved using parts of human corpses, often those of executed criminals or saints, in various charms and remedies. For example, the moss growing on a human skull might be used to treat nosebleeds, or the hand of a hanged man might be believed to cure goiter. While gruesome to modern sensibilities, it was rooted in the belief that the vital essence or power of the deceased could be transferred to the living, particularly if the death was violent or the person was considered holy. It's a stark reminder of the desperate measures people would take, and the strange beliefs they held in their quest for health and protection. Ultimately, in your medieval world, superstition is not a separate, irrational belief system. It's an integral part of your daily life, influencing everything you do, from the moment you wake until you close your eyes at night. It's a pragmatic response to uncertainty, a way to exert some control over the uncontrollable, and a constant negotiation with the unseen forces that shape your destiny. You live in a world where the sacred and the mundane, the natural and the supernatural, are inextricably linked, and every action is a potential act of magic, a prayer, or a ward against the shadows. The academic debate still rages about the extent to which these practices were genuinely believed to be effective, or if they were more about psychological comfort and a sense of agency in a chaotic world. Were people truly convinced that a hagstone would stop nightmares? Or did it simply provide a comforting ritual that helped them sleep better? It's difficult to separate the genuine belief from the psychological benefit, as both undoubtedly played a role in the persistence of these charms and rituals. As the centuries turn, a subtle shift begins to ripple through your world. The pervasive shadows of medieval superstition, while still present, start to recede, challenged by new ways of thinking and a burgeoning curiosity about the natural world. You might not notice it immediately, but the seeds of a new era are being sown. An era where reason and observation will slowly begin to chip away at the dominance of the mystical. Ultimately, your medieval life is a constant negotiation with the unseen. You don't just live in a physical world, you live in a magical one, where every object, every action, every word carries potential power. Charms, amulets, and rituals are not just quaint customs, they are essential tools. Your primary means of defense and influence in a world brimming with both benevolent and malevolent forces. They offer a sense of control, a flicker of hope, and a tangible connection to the mystical energies that permeate your existence. A common historical fact that marks this transition is the rise of humanism during the Renaissance. Scholars and thinkers begin to look back to the classical texts of ancient Greece and Rome, rediscovering philosophies that emphasized human potential, reason, and empirical observation. This renewed interest in human capabilities, rather than solely divine intervention, subtly challenges the medieval worldview that placed humanity as a pawn in a cosmic battle between good and evil. You might encounter a traveling scholar, perhaps one who carries books filled with diagrams of the human body, or astronomical charts that seem to explain the heavens without recourse to omens or divine wrath. Their ideas, while initially met with skepticism, begin to spark a different kind of curiosity, as the protective charms you wear offer a small measure of comfort. A deeper yet more insidious fear begins to creep into the collective consciousness of your medieval world, the fear of witches and demons. These aren't just abstract concepts from sermons. They are believed to be very real. Malevolent entities actively seeking to harm you, corrupt your soul, and undermine the divine order. The shadows lengthen, and with them, the whispers of dark pacts and forbidden powers grow louder. Consider the profound impact of the printing press. an obscure detail that revolutionized the dissemination of knowledge. Before, books were painstakingly copied by hand, making them rare and expensive, largely confined to monasteries and wealthy elites. Now, with movable type, books can be produced in greater numbers and at a lower cost. This means that new ideas, scientific discoveries, and even challenges to traditional beliefs can spread more rapidly and widely. It democratizes knowledge, making it harder for any single authority, whether the church or a local wise woman, to control the narrative. You might see a printed pamphlet discussing a new medical theory, or a book that questions the efficacy of certain charms, slowly, imperceptibly, nudging the collective mind towards a more rational understanding. It's like the internet suddenly becoming widely available, allowing everyone to access information and form their own opinions. Rather than relying solely on the village elders' pronouncements, you hear stories, passed from village to village, of individuals who possess unnatural abilities. Perhaps a woman whose cows suddenly sicken and die, or a man whose crops mysteriously wither while his neighbors flourish. These aren't just unfortunate coincidences, they are often attributed to witchcraft, the dark art of manipulating unseen forces for nefarious purposes. The fear is palpable, a cold knot in your stomach. Because a witch isn't just an enemy, they are someone who looks like you, lives among you, and yet harbors a terrifying, destructive power. The academic debate still rages among historians about the precise timeline and causes of the decline of medieval superstition. Was it a direct result of the Renaissance and the scientific revolution? Or were there existing internal tensions within medieval society and the church itself that paved the way for these changes? Some argue that the very excesses of the witch hunts and the increasing absurdity of some accusations eventually led to a form of societal fatigue and skepticism. It's a complex, multifaceted process, not a sudden, clean break. The concept of a witch, in your medieval understanding, is deeply intertwined with the devil. While earlier folk beliefs might have seen magic as a neutral force, capable of both good and ill, the church's increasing emphasis on a literal Satan transformed the perception of magic. Now, any power outside of divine grace is suspect, and those who wield it are often believed to have made a pact with the devil, trading their immortal souls for earthly power. This theological framework provides a terrifyingly clear explanation for a misfortune. It's not just random, it's the work of a human agent, empowered by demonic forces. You might notice a subtle shift in the approach to illness. While the village wise woman still practices her blend of herbs and charms, there are now more formally trained physicians, often educated in universities, who are beginning to emphasize anatomical study and more systematic observation of symptoms. The four humors theory still holds sway, but there's a growing desire to understand the body's mechanisms in a more empirical way. The physical ailment is still seen as a challenge, but the solutions are increasingly sought in the tangible world, rather than solely in the spiritual or magical. Imagine the tension in your village when a series of misfortunes strikes. A child falls ill with a wasting sickness. A sudden fire consumes a barn, or a valuable piece of livestock inexplicably dies. As fear and desperation mount, eyes begin to turn towards the marginalized, the eccentric, the old woman who lives alone on the edge of the woods and mutters to herself. She might be a skilled herbalist, a wise woman who helps with childbirth, but in this climate of fear, her knowledge and independence can easily be twisted into evidence of dark dealings. It's like when your internet goes out, and instead of calling your provider, you immediately suspect your quirky neighbor with the elaborate antenna array is somehow siphoning off your bandwidth. Totally logical, right? The fear of demons and witches, while still present, begins to change. The peak of the witch hunts, ironically, often occurs after the medieval period, in the early modern era, as institutionalized persecution becomes more fervent. However, as philosophical and scientific thought advances, the intellectual elite begins to question the literal existence of witches and the devil's direct interference in everyday life. The focus shifts from active demonic malice to human failing or natural causes. You might hear a learned priest explain a misfortune as a test of faith, rather than a witch's curse, reflecting a subtle theological shift. A common historical fact is the gradual rise of witch trials in the later Middle Ages, culminating in the more widespread persecutions of the early modern period. While isolated accusations existed earlier, The systematic pursuit and prosecution of alleged witches became more organized as the church and secular authorities developed more sophisticated legal and theological frameworks for identifying and punishing them. Treatises like the Malleus Maleficarum Hammer of Witches, though written at the very end of the medieval period, codified many of the beliefs about witches, their pacts with the devil, and the methods for identifying and interrogating them. This shift from localized folk beliefs to institutionalized persecution marks a terrifying escalation of the fear. Consider the burgeoning interest in alchemy, an obscure detail that straddled the line between science and magic. While often associated with the pursuit of turning base metals into gold, alchemy was also a precursor to modern chemistry, involving detailed experimentation and observation of chemical reactions. Alchemists, though often secretive and mystical, were also keen observers of the natural world, seeking to understand its underlying principles. This pursuit, while still rooted in a belief in hidden powers, represented a step towards systematic inquiry. It's like a mad scientist in their lab, trying to turn lead into gold, but accidentally inventing a new type of battery in the process. The devil himself is a constant, terrifying presence in your worldview. He is not just a metaphor for evil, he is a real, cunning adversary, constantly tempting humanity, trying to lead souls astray, and actively causing suffering. You see his influence everywhere in moments of weakness, in acts of cruelty, in the inexplicable misfortunes that plague your life. Sermons vividly describe his hideous appearance, his cunning deceptions, and the eternal torment that awaits those who fall under his sway. This pervasive fear of damnation, coupled with the belief in the devil's active interference in earthly affairs, creates a profound sense of spiritual vulnerability. The academic debate still rages about the extent to which the decline of superstition was a top-down or bottom-up process. Did the intellectual changes among the elite gradually filter down to the common people? Or did a growing pragmatism and skepticism among the peasantry, born from harsh realities, also contribute to a questioning of old beliefs? It's likely a combination of both, with different regions and social classes experiencing the shift at different paces. An obscure detail you might not know is the belief in incubus and succubus demons. These were believed to be male and female demons, respectively, who would visit people in their sleep to engage in sexual intercourse. While this might sound like a strange dream to a modern mind, in your medieval world, it was a terrifying reality, believed to drain a person's vitality, lead to illness, or even result in the birth of monstrous offspring. Accusations of such demonic encounters were taken very seriously, often leading to exorcisms or other spiritual interventions. It highlights the extent to which the demonic was believed to infiltrate even the most private and vulnerable aspects of human life. The very concept of luck begins to be reevaluated. While people still desire good fortune, there's a growing understanding that hard work, skill, and careful planning can influence outcomes as much as, if not more than, a lucky charm. The emphasis shifts from passively waiting for fate to intervene to actively shaping one's own destiny. The world, while still mysterious, becomes a little less arbitrary, a little more responsive to human effort. The academic debate still rages among historians about the primary drivers of the witch hunts. Was it a top-down phenomenon, driven by church doctrine and legal reforms, or was it a bottom-up phenomenon, fueled by local anxieties, social tensions, and the desperate need to find scapegoats for widespread misfortune? Some argue that economic hardship, social upheaval, and even climate change played a significant role in creating a fertile ground for accusations. It's a complex historical puzzle with no single, easy answer. You might notice that certain traditional rituals and charms, while still practiced, begin to lose some of their intense, desperate conviction. The red ribbon on the baby's wrist might become more of a tradition than a fervent ward against changelings. The horseshoe above the door might be more about heritage than a literal shield against ill fortune. The fear doesn't vanish overnight, but it softens, becoming more of a cultural echo than a pervasive daily anxiety. You are taught from a young age to guard against demonic temptation. You learn prayers to recite, saints to invoke, and rituals to perform to keep the devil and his minions at bay. The sign of the cross, the sprinkling of holy water, remember that. The wearing of religious medals, these aren't just acts of piety. They are active defenses against spiritual attack. You live in a constant state of vigilance, Aware that your soul is a battlefield, and that unseen forces are vying for its ultimate fate, the academic debate still rages about the impact of religious reformations on superstition. Did the Protestant Reformation, with its emphasis on individual faith and direct access to Scripture, reduce the reliance on saints and relics, and thus diminish some forms of superstition? Or did it, in some areas, even fuel new forms of religious fervor and fear, leading to intensified witch hunts? The relationship is complex and varied across different regions and denominations. The fear of demonic possession is also very real. If someone in your community begins to act erratically, speaking in strange voices, exhibiting unnatural strength, or having violent fits, it is often believed that they are possessed by a demon. The church offers the remedy of exorcism, a terrifying and dramatic ritual performed by a priest, designed to cast out the malevolent spirit. You might witness such an event. The screams and contortions of the possessed person, a chilling testament to the very real power of the demonic in your world. It's like watching a horror movie, but instead of popcorn, you're clutching a crucifix and genuinely fearing for your life. Ultimately, your medieval world, with its deep-seated obsession with the supernatural, slowly begins to transform. The lines between the tangible and the mystical, while never fully disappearing, start to clarify. The human mind, still seeking meaning and control, increasingly turns to observation, reason, and empirical inquiry. The shadows of superstition, once all-encompassing, begin to recede, making way for the dawn of a new age, where the mysteries of the universe are approached not just with fear and awe, but with a burgeoning sense of curiosity and a relentless pursuit of understanding. The concept of maleficia, or harmful magic, is at the heart of the fear of witches. This isn't just about fortune-telling or love potions. It's about magic used to cause illness, death, infertility, or crop failure. If your cow stops giving milk, or your child suffers from a mysterious fever, and you suspect a neighbor, you might accuse them of maleficia. This belief in direct, malicious magical intervention provides a concrete explanation for suffering, but also a dangerous outlet for fear and resentment within communities.